The first law of power, never outshine the master, is not merely a cynical office maxim or a fleeting piece of corporate advice. It is a foundational, tragic commentary on the immutable architecture of the human ego, revealing the fatal necessity of strategic humility in any hierarchy, an intense life-or-death confrontation with the master's most fragile and most protected possession, their sense of absolute superiority. To transgress this law is to commit professional suicide, not through incompetence, but through the blinding light of unsolicited brilliance. For the master, regardless of their outward generosity or apparent confidence, possesses an innate primal insecurity rooted in the fear of replacement, a fear so ancient and so powerful that it bypasses reason, turning admiration into immediate lethal envy. The master's position is not simply a job title, but an existential identity, and any perceived threat to that station is experienced not as a workplace challenge, but as a direct, unmediated assault on their very selfhood, triggering a biological fight-or-flight response that mandates the removal of the perceived predator, which is, tragically, the successful subordinate. The moment the subordinate star begins to burn brighter than the celestial orb of the master, that subordinate ceases to be an asset and is instantly metabolized into a threat, a dark portent that must be extinguished, not with rational thought, but with a visceral, organizational counterattack designed for exile and ruin, orchestrated with a subtle cruelty that masks insecurity with righteous indignation. This is the bitter truth that every ambitious soul must swallow. True power often demands that you not merely succeed, but that you succeed quietly, or more profoundly, that your success serves as the polished, perfectly angled mirror reflecting the master's image back to them, amplifying their glory, not your own. For vanity is the Achilles heel of all authority, a psychological vulnerability that the strategic subordinate must learn to feed and satisfy before attempting any maneuver of their own. The tragedy of the master is that they are trapped in a self-made prison of narcissism, where their success has isolated them, breeding a suspicion that every compliment is a ploy, and every outstanding performance by a junior is a prelude to usurpation. They view their subordinates less as partners in success and more as a field of vipers waiting for the moment of their weakness. And it is this paranoia, this corrosive isolation, that makes them so vulnerable to the calculated flattery of the disciplined apprentice. The truly powerful apprentice understands that their primary function is to act as a shadow, essential yet subdued, indispensable yet always secondary, deploying their skills not to claim the spotlight, but to construct a pedestal upon which the master can stand taller, thereby making the apprentice necessary for the master's elevation. And in this quiet indispensability lies an unassailable, long-term power far exceeding the fleeting satisfaction of immediate recognition. This is the profound difference between the flash of brilliance that attracts attention and the bedrock of competence that quietly makes the entire structure stable, a distinction lost on the young and the vain, but mastered by the quiet inheritor of thrones. This disciplined suppression of the ego, the ability to hold brilliance in reserve, to intentionally engineer small, visible flaws that remind the master they are still teaching, or to humbly attribute all victories, not just some, but all significant victories, to the master's initial insight, guiding hand, and inimitable genius, is the supreme test of strategic intelligence, separating the momentarily brilliant flash in the pan from the enduring, patient architect of empire, who understands that the clock of ambition must sometimes run slow, that the greatest force is not the one that explodes, but the one that accrues, hidden and vital, until the moment the master, having exhausted their own light, must turn to the one person they were foolishly allowed to keep close, the one they underestimated, the quiet, indispensable servant who never once dimmed the sun, but merely became the perfect vessel to carry its light forward, and crucially, the only person who knows how the machine truly operates. The operationalization of this law requires a level of theatrical subtlety that borders on art. The subordinate must become a master performer, not of their skills, but of their own perceived inferiority, a constant, gentle reinforcement of the hierarchy that soothes the master's perpetual anxiety. This means choosing the battles where one shines, never in the presence of the master, never on a project the master claims as his own creation, and never in front of an audience the master seeks to impress. Instead, the apprentice's light should be reserved for the darkest, most thankless corners of the organization, for the vital, unseen plumbing that makes the entire structure function, ensuring that when credit is inevitably due, the master's hand can smoothly scoop it up, claiming the visible victory while simultaneously creating an unbreakable internal reliance on the subordinate's hidden skill set. To ignore this psychological dynamic is to engage in a form of organizational heresy, where the subordinate is not judged on the quality of their contribution, but on the quantity of the master's discomfort that contribution creates. And in the court of envy, discomfort is the highest, most punishable crime. The master will instinctively employ various forms of sabotage, ranging from subtle discrediting in closed-door meetings to the systematic denial of resources or promotion, all rationalized under the guise of not being a team player or lacking maturity, because the root cause, fear, can never be openly admitted. The subordinate who outshines their master finds their professional ceilings suddenly lowered, their reputation mysteriously tarnished, and their former allies inexplicably distant, a victim of a coordinated, silent purge executed by a master whose only remaining currency is their ability to destroy. Furthermore, this law contains an inverse, highly critical lesson for those who are the master. The law reveals the catastrophic cost of your own vanity, showing that by succumbing to the temptation of envy, you cripple your own organization, driving away the very talent necessary for your sustained success, and in the process, guaranteeing your eventual stagnation and downfall. The master who cannot tolerate brilliance beneath them is destined to surround themselves with mediocrity, ensuring their immediate comfort but accelerating their obsolescence, a slow, inevitable death by surrounding oneself with yes-men and the harmlessly inept. Therefore, the apprentice who adheres to the first law does more than survive. They are training in the emotional intelligence required for true leadership, demonstrating a profound capacity for delayed gratification, self-sacrifice, and strategic restraint, the three pillars of sustainable, long-term power that almost every master fails to earn. The deepest meaning of the first law is therefore not simply survival, but the supreme cultivation of patience, a willingness to trade the immediate, fleeting high of public praise for the enduring bedrock foundation of long-term, unassailable authority, understanding that power is not seized in a moment of loud defiance, but inherited in a moment of quiet, necessary transition. This patience transforms the subordinate from a mere ambitious climber to a philosophical strategist, one who sees the entire chessboard, recognizing that the master is merely a temporary piece, a necessary shield, and a crucial stepping stone. The law teaches the necessity of invisibility and quiet competence, a state where one's value is felt and desperately needed, rather than loudly proclaimed and consequently resented. By mastering the art of the attributed victory, by turning the spotlight outward to glorify the temporary holder of authority, the apprentice not only survives, but ensures the master's dependence, weaving a net of reliance so subtle and so strong that when the time comes, when the master either fails, retires, or overreaches, the transition of power will be seen by all parties, including the master, not as a coup, but as a necessary, inevitable consequence, the simple and logical elevation of the only person who truly knew how to carry the light without claiming it, making this law not just a cautionary tale of envy,
but an inspirational roadmap for the individual willing to discipline their own hunger for vanity in pursuit of a higher, delayed, and ultimately total command.